Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Breakthrough Chats, a series where we speak to MPs, activists, and a few well known faces to dissect some of the biggest issues facing us. In this first episode, I speak to This Is England actor Andrew Ellis about growing up in Manchester, the Labour Party, and working class identity and representation in politics. Hi, Andy, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good mate. Good mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Just weird now into 2021.
Yeah.
Weird year last year, and I feel like this year is not going to be any less normal.
Yeah, I mean, there's hope in there with the vaccine and stuff, but it's just for me, it's now strange that like in 3 months' time, it's gonna be a year since we went into lockdown and stuff. But yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Because I remember this time last year, kind of just putting the news. I watch the news all the time. I remember just putting the news on and being like, "Oh, what's this kicking off in China? Oh, that's worrying." But then you kind of was like, like you'll know with the same age, like every other year you've got swine flu or bird flu or whatever. So you kind of brushed it off at first, like, oh, they said this about swine flu. Oh, they said this about this, that, and the other. So yeah, they meant it this time.
How have you found it? Like, obviously, we've been up and down tiers like no tomorrow, but like, kind of how how have you and your family sort of dealt with it during the period?
Um, yeah, all right, really. I mean, I was sort of lucky enough I was working literally a week before the lockdown. I just finished on a job. Um, and then I've been lucky enough to kind of be able to work from home doing sort of voice work. Um, so yeah, so I mean, for me it's been okay. Like, we've got two daughters. One's 6, well, just turned 6 in October, and our youngest just turned 1 in May. Um, so that was eventful with the schools being shut and things like that. It was, home teaching. My youngest took her first steps about 3 days after Boris told us we all had to stay in. So that was weird and kind of a beautiful thing, but also like a crazy, mad, adventure to start when we could only leave the house for an hour a day. But yeah, my wife's been working throughout. She's a nurse, so she's been, obviously cracking on. And yeah, it's been a strange one. It feels, I keep saying this to everyone, it feels like it's been forever since this whole thing started, but also it could have been last week. It's kind of time has nothing. There is no time anymore. It's like that week between Christmas and New Year's Eve when nothing has a day. I think that's been like that since March for me. So it's quite strange.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's been thinking and feeling like that. It's been such a weird time. Like, even like people who've been like furloughed and then come back to work, or people that have, so many people lost their jobs and then are like looking for work in such a crazy
Yeah.
time. And it's just absolutely, and obviously so many people have been affected by it, and from a health perspective as well. My flatmate had it at the start of the pandemic, which was, and he's still, God, about 7-8 months later, he's
Still
still
affected.
affected. Yeah, and it's
That's
crazy.
it,
Like,
mate. That's it. I think that's, I know they go on about it on the news, and the government go on about it a lot, but I think that's the thing that they need to ham down. Like, I know a couple of people who've had it and are sort of still affected, or had been affected for a while. And I grew up with asthma, and it's not nice not being able to breathe when you run or anything. So if that's something kind of new to you, it's worth just not mixing and going out, even if you only kind of get that. And then obviously, it can be a lot more worse and a lot serious. Sadly, a lot of people have lost their lives to it. But yeah, it's a horrible thing, isn't it? Like in the summer, you kind of forgot how nasty it was for some reason, and then as the winters come back, and especially this new strain, the hospitals are getting overcrowded again, and stuff like that. It's just yeah, it's scary again now.
yeah, definitely. Obviously, a bit later we'll touch on more coronavirus related stuff, but just to sort
Yeah,
of go back a bit. Obviously,
because nobody talks about that enough, Alex.
No, not at all. Like we have definitely not seen enough COVID-19 news the last 10 months or however long. I've lost track of how long it's been now. But yeah, it's about 10 months, well, going on 10 months. But yeah, sort of going back a little bit. Obviously I said in the intro, wanted to talk about, so you grew up in Manchester
Yeah.
in the 90s and going into the noughties. Like, what was it like growing up in Wythenshawe?
For me, I don't know. It was a weird one, really, because I mean, it was quite a rough area when I was younger, and there was a lot of gang violence, things like that. I remember if you were kind of because Wythenshawe's kind of separated into like so many different wards because it's massive. Like I think Wythenshawe's like half of Manchester alone. Like it's huge. So it's separated into sort of like smaller different areas, and then obviously when you do things like that, it releases like tribalism. So there were sort of gangs from different areas that were literally, over a motorway bridge from each other and stuff like that. So yeah, when I grew up, like you kind of couldn't walk through one area if you were from another area for fear of like getting beaten up at best. um, and it's weird because when I talk about like the area, because I'm from here and I still live here now, because I love it. I genuinely do. It's one of the best places in the world in terms of community spirit. People around here are brilliant. But then there is that kind of horrible side to it. Like there was I think there was about 2 or 3 people when I was growing up, not in my year directly, but within my school that some were shot and things like that. So it was scary, really. But growing up, you kind of what kids are like as a teenager. You kind of just like, oh yeah, it's just where I'm from. It's only when you get older you actually realize, like, wow. And when you have children yourself, that you kind of go, this is it was a rough area. I don't think if I had the choice and I had children when I was growing up, I would have got out. But I think now it's it's really it's nice now. It's come a long way. A lot of like gentrification. The tram has opened, which has allowed people to kind of, because it's gorgeous, man. It's such a I've got friends who move here like yourself from out of Manchester, and I'll always be like, come and look at Wythenshawe, and it's really green. It's very green compared to most of Manchester. And it's just a nice place to live. And I think with the tram and stuff like that, and HS2, if that ever happens, as kind of made it a little bit more appealing. I think 2 or 3 years ago, it was like one of the top places in the country to buy a house, which is crazy. But yeah, and then in the noughties and stuff, like you say, growing up, it was yeah, it was all right. It was, I mean, I'm kind of old enough to remember like the last days of youth clubs and things like that when we had stuff to do. And then as we got older, it just became less and less, and now there's nothing really, and you can kind of see that creeping back into the society around here, that kids are getting bored again and hanging around doing things that they shouldn't be doing and stuff, and it's a shame. Basically, it's kind of, it's getting nicer, but then it's also in this weird mishmash of, it is a council estate, and there's a lot of, it is a deprived area. There's a lot of unfortunately, there's a lot of families that don't have much, and kids that just kind of get left by the wayside to kind of go out and get up to no good, really.
I was going to say, like, in terms of opportunity for people, obviously that people talk a lot about social mobility and how there's this sort of like this mantra of like, wherever you're from, you'll always have an opportunity to excel in whatever career or field of whatever you want to get into. But do you feel like in deprived areas, such as parts of Wythenshawe, that opportunity is much less than other areas, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I say, I think even for myself growing up, like, again, at the time I was growing up, Labour were sort of in power, and there was, there was a little bit more, like say, there was stuff to do. Like, for instance, the school I went to back then, it had a speciality in arts, performing arts and science and maths. And so if you kind of were into them subjects, as I was, they kind of pushed you in that, and it was great. And then, a couple of years later, once the current government got into power and stuff, I think it became an academy, and it just went downhill. And it's now closed. It closed at the beginning of this year, completely shut a school, which just doesn't make sense anyway, to close it. It had a couple of £1 million rebuild about 2 years after I left. But yeah, I mean, there's a big hospital here, the airport's around the corner, and there's a couple of industrial estates, and I think that's the prospect for most people who grow up around here. I think the regeneration thing that I touched on before is brilliant, but that's just bringing in people with money. It's not helping the people that live here at the minute. Because there isn't much in the way of job opportunities, in the way of helping people to kind of better themselves and get out of situations that they're in money wise. A couple of the schools have kind of had a bit of, like I say, a bit of regeneration and become sort of academies in various, I think there's like a medical one, and there's a sports academy and stuff. But yeah, I just don't see it working really. I see it as it's I think more money needs to be put into them social aspects of things for young people to do, to aspire to see that there's a great big open world out there. Up until being sort of 15, when I luckily fell into the career that I'm in, I'd been on holiday and stuff, but you never really see outside of your area. You know what I mean? Like, it's I remember thinking, like, places like, my nana lives in Rusholme, it felt like 1,000 miles away, and it's just down the road. It's just this weird kind of, you kind of, I think, get blindsided. Yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does totally. Like, I've seen it even, like, I moved to Manchester going on nearly 7 years ago now. And I've lived sort of in and around the city centre at that time. And even in that time, it's changed so much. And you hear, like, I was down at Ancoats the other day, like, grabbing a coffee. And, an old fellow sort of came up to me and sort of said, "Oh, is there any way I can go for a drink around here?" And he sort of explained to me, he said, like, how much Ancoats itself had changed over the last, few decades. He said, like, it's totally different place. And there is that fear, I think, with gentrification, of pushing out people who have lived in Manchester or lived in parts of Manchester their whole life, and now they're not able to afford to do so. And obviously that's a really serious issue, obviously, with lack of affordable housing that we've sort of seen over the years, and people being pushed further and further out. And it's people like me as well, like, to be fair, it's people like me coming up here and probably being a part of that problem to an extent. But
I mean,
a hard balance, isn't it? It's a hard balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a hard balance, but I think and it can work, but I think there just does need to be a bit more thought in the social aspect that creates, like, nowadays there's a lot of new houses being built, but only sort of 3% of them are affordable family homes. But the banners say, "Oh, we're building affordable family homes," and it's like, no, you're not. You're building really nice houses for people who've got money, and you're actually knocking down council flats where people, where do they live now? And yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, I guess, but it's who knows?
Yeah, it's a difficult problem to solve, I think, because, well, actually, you could actually argue it's a very simple thing to solve. You could just say, like, you bring legislation in where you can actually tell developers a percentage of houses they need to build, which are either social housing or affordable housing, so people get on the ladder as well. Because, like, people like our generation have really struggled to get on the housing ladder. Like, I'm still yet to buy my first house, and I think you bought your first house not too long ago, I don't think. Or
we've been here 2013, so we've been here sort of 7 years. This 8 years this year. Wow. Yeah, I mean, but again, I always I know how lucky I am to work in a business where I can do a job and then have a sizable lump of money where I can go, okay, let's put this down in the house. That doesn't happen. I mean, I've got friends who have been to university, they're now in careers, and they still have to live with the parents because they just can't afford that deposit, because while they might be earning a decent wage, you know, you still have to kind of live, and you still have to pay things month by month, university tuition fees, etc. That just hold you back from making that next step, really. And yeah, I think you're right. I think more legislation in place for, you know, affordable homes, and more, you know, I grew up in a council house. I think my mum bought it when I was like 15, but you know, we grew up in various council houses and stuff, and it works. It's a system that works when it works, you know what I mean? But at the minute it doesn't. Like my sister, she's, you know, she's been on a waiting list for a council house for, God, 8 years now. She's got 2 kids. She's overcrowded. Like, she lives with my mum. It's overcrowded, and it's like, how does she get out of that? You know, I think the only way that she can kind of get out of that is she has to become homeless for so long, and then they help her. And it's like, what? That's just so crazy. You know what I mean? Like my mum, you know, in the early 90s, just got access to a home, and was able then to kind of build on that. She had kids, she had a family, and then you know, got a career. And once her career picked up, she then bought that home, and that's a great system that can work when it works. But you know, at the minute, I think it is massively broken. You know, there's so many young families living in, you know, homeless accommodation and things like that, and it's a shame, really. It's people can't carry on the life and make them next steps, and obviously then that affects mental health and things like that. So, you know, you end up with a generation of, you know, high suicide rates and things like that, I guess, and malnourished kids that, you know, footballers have to feed, and you know, things like that. So
Well, yeah, I think from what I read recently, it was over 1 million families are on the waiting list for council housing.
yeah,
I think it's actually predicted it could be up to 1.6 million, but it hasn't been like that's like from a charity. I think you said that it's more like 1.6 million. But
yeah.
all those
And
people that, yeah, sorry, go on.
oh no, go on, sorry, mate.
I was going to say that's 1.6 million families who have got no sort of stable accommodation, like no real security or like
Yeah,
knowing of where they live, and like that's like such a fundamental human right, which so many people in this country don't seem to have at the moment, which is just
exactly.
very scary, really, when you're living in the 6th richest country in the world.
That's it. And the greatest con, or one of the greatest cons as well, is that it's all the foreigners' fault. It's not the people who are building the houses that aren't affordable. It's not the rich millionaires and billionaires that build these massive estates, but none of the houses are affordable. It's the foreigners, apparently. And it's like, how do people buy that? Do you know what I mean? How people kind of, because that's one thing that will probably pop up for you. You know, like, it's crazy that people will blame the wrong people because they get spoon fed by, you know, certain newspapers and certain media outlets, that it's you know, it's their fault from over there. It's not their fault from over there. It's these idiots that keep voting in, that look after their millionaire mates. You know, bankers boast about being friendly with bankers and things like that. Like, you know, there's money out there. 100% there's money out there. Yeah, that's just, one thing that bugs me, and that's, you know, speaking to yourself about the political party and things like that. And I know we've spoken, like, for me, one thing that really grates on me with that, being a working class lad, is, you know, you have your people like your Lawrence Fox, your Katie Hopkins, your Tommy Robinson, who claim to speak for the working class, but all they do is they just stoke that lie of you know, especially like your Tommy Robinson. They stoke that lie, that misconception that it's, you know, it's the foreigners, it's the people who don't look like you and stuff like that. And it's they don't speak for the working class. They're speaking for them billionaires, and you're being fed it and agreeing with it because, you know, I guess, I don't know, I can't understand it myself. There must be, you know, it's easier to blame that person that you can see, I guess, rather than that kind of hidden kind of person who just owns a company or whatever. Yeah.
I think as well, it's direct, like it's taking the anger that a lot of people and grievances that they have and directing it to people that aren't responsible for it. And obviously, if you deflect away from the people that are responsible, they can keep getting away with the things that they're doing, which are just absolutely horrendous. Like you're just seeing so much of it, and like it just seems to be increasing all the time. And as we said, we've seen throughout this pandemic the sort of cronyism, the corruption that's taking place. It's quite clear that there are bigger forces in play.
100%, and without even, it's, it kind of sounds a bit conspiracy, but it's not. It's like you can see it on prime minister's questions. Like Boris Johnson will get asked a question and he just deflects. He doesn't answer. There's no, I know politicians, are known for kind of deflecting a little bit here and there, but I don't think I've ever watched prime minister's questions and seen Boris answer a question. It should just be called prime minister's tennis or something. They just, it's crazy. But what do you expect from a man who hides in a fridge, like when he's asked questions that are too difficult? Do you know what I mean? Like that's to me was the craziest. That's when the country, should have just gone, hang about a minute. This bloke that is supposedly going to lead the charge with Brexit and all that stuff at the time has just been asked a really difficult question and hidden in an industrial fridge. I'm still going to go and vote for him, though. It's just beyond me. But yeah, that's it. I think it is the blame being. There is an anger out there. Of course, there is. The working class have been shafted a lot. But again, it's not by the people that are getting blamed. It's not Europe's fault or whoever's fault. It's them bloody massive multi-billionaire tycoons who are extorting them for all they've got. Do you know what I mean? And that's always been the way, I guess. I think this is something I've said to you in the past. I think one thing for me is, as a nation, we became a diplomatic nation because we were tired of being ruled over by the wealthy monarchy and this and that. And all we've kind of done now is just installed another really wealthy Etonian elite class that are just doing the exact same thing. They're voted in, but they're voted in on the basis of manipulation and lies, really. They're not voted in because, the whole red wall crumbling and stuff, it's all manipulation and lies. Brexit, there's a film on Netflix about, I think it's Benedict Cumberbatch who plays Dominic Cummings, and even that film just shows you how much you were lied to, that we were all lied to. People just don't care, and it infuriates me as someone who's into politics and genuinely cares about the state of the country and the state of the world. That people can kind of just be okay with being lied to now, even when the facts are there, they're put in front of them. The bus that disappeared, with its slogans and stuff, were just brushed aside. Like, oh yeah, we told you that. It's not going to happen, and that's fine. That's okay. It just baffles me.
Yeah, definitely. There's been so many lies told, and it's not just the Brexit campaign. Like it's been ever since. Like it doesn't ever feel like anything that's said. Like I think everyone's sort of doubting now. Whatever any politician says, anything at all, they're going, is that a lie? Because it's become. But that the thing is that they double down on that lie. They don't just go like, it's like they think we're all a bit stupid, and we're just like, it's even like with the tampon tax thing. I don't know if you've seen that. Like a lot of Brexit politicians are sort of taking credit for it and saying like how they've been fighting for it for years, and like now we're out of the EU, we can do that. And it's like we could have done that when we were in the EU, and a lot of these MPs actually voted against a Labour amendment in 2015, which would have actually brought that into place. So it's just this absolute dishonesty, hypocrisy that seems to just rule over British politics at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, global politics. You can look at the biggest idiot in the room over in America, and he's built a career, as has Boris Johnson, on I think telling people what they want to hear for the time being. And look at the pandemic. Look how many times they've U-turned because, I think, tomorrow there's going to be another U-turn with the schools closures again. You know, leaving it to the last minute is playing with people's lives with every decision that they make. But yeah, you know, I think it has got to a point now where I think they get away with it so much because I think the vast majority of people don't care. I think the vast majority of people, my parents, whenever it gets to election time and I speak to them about it, the answer is, it don't matter who's in power. None of them give a shit about us. And that is I think the genuine consensus of a lot of, especially working class people. A lot of people, I mean, most of my family don't even vote, I don't think. And I actually said that to my mum the other day. She rang up about the whole tier 4 thing, and she was like, "Oh, you know, he's an idiot, isn't he, that Boris?" And I was like, "But it's kind of your fault. You didn't go out and vote. I'm sorry, mum, I love you, but you could have potentially, you know, changed that outcome." And there is a difference, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, this whole none of them care about us thing. I think that's why I think the Conservatives have clicked to that and know that and can know that they can kind of lie to the working class, turn up, you know, in areas like Wythenshawe and places like that every 4 years, smile in a boxing club and then get the vote, because they're just characters now, aren't they? It's just, I think they've kind of gone into that kind of soap world where they are just kind of characters and people either like that character or don't. And don't really listen.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's like people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is literally the biggest character going. How it still boggles my mind how people vote for him. Like, it totally boggles my mind. But you got people like him, who's like a massive character. Priti Patel, in her own way, is you know, like a villain. And you've literally got and you've just got these, as you said, you've got these sort of personality. And Boris Johnson, prime example, cultivated this personality that people just seem to really like. I don't know, you know, I've done a bit of reading on it and, like, you know, sort of speaking to people and stuff, and it seems to be this sort of positivity, and they call it authenticity, though I think he's probably one of the most inauthentic politicians that's probably ever lived in the UK, really. But he oozes that, like, this fake authenticity. And I think that's why people are so, like, enamored with him. Like, there's such a strong support for him, even throughout this crisis, where he's sort of time and time again shown his incompetence. It seems to be people just like, well, that's just Boris, you know, he'll make mistakes. That's just who he is. And it's kind of accepting that's who he is, and they like,
he's getting Brexit done. yeah, that's it. I think that is it. I think, you know, people will put up with that kind of, the fact that he is an idiot, because he spouts over and over again that, oh, at least we're getting Brexit done, and that Jeremy Corbyn, oh, he would have had you all, you know, it'd have been a communist state by now if he'd have got in. At least I'm getting Brexit done. And then, oh, are you there, Alex?
Yeah, I can see you, mate.
Sorry, something's just gone mad on me. Oh, you're there, I can see you now. You know, at least he's getting Brexit done. And then he wasn't even doing that. Do you know what I mean? He was failing massively on that. But yeah, I think that is the thing, isn't it? It must resonate with a lot of people. It's so alien to me because, you know, Trump's exactly the same. He's just a incompetent idiot, but he's also somehow relatable. What that says about society, I don't know. It worries me, but I do genuinely think it's because, like you say, for years and years we've been spoon-fed this myth, this lie that, like you say, it's either Europe's fault or it's you know, the Polish coming over, or it's, you know, when I was a kid it was the Asians, and you just kind of, like, you grow up and you kind of look at it and you go, no, it's not, because I know these people and I chat to these people, and it's definitely not. It's definitely the millionaires. It's definitely them, and you can see that reflected in politics. You know, when you look at election day, one thing that always gives me hope is those areas where people mix, cultures mix, always tend to vote against Tories. Like, do you know what I mean? London's very red, Manchester's very red. Them big city areas where cultures mix and stuff, people are slowly realizing that it is lies. You know what I mean? I've never been affected by anyone other than the billionaires, the millionaires in power. I think there's a great meme that's like, I've got more in common with a Jamaican Bricky or whatever than I have with Jacob Rees-Mogg or anyone like that, and it's so true. I think the for me the working class, when you watch kind of documentaries on like miners' strikes and things like that back in the 80s, I think we had a lot more clout because we used to stick together and we used to, you're going to close, we'll just walk out and we'll leave it then, and you won't have electric or whatever. I just don't think anyone's got the backbone anymore because they're being lied. It's just there's so much crap put on them day by day that, again, like you were saying before, you don't know what to believe anymore. You don't know what's right, what's wrong, what tier you're in, or anything like that.
Well, it's being trodden on, isn't it, repeatedly? If you're repeatedly trodden on, like whether that's like you're not able to get a council house, whether or not you're turned down for a bank account, a loan, or whatever, and you're repeatedly facing obstacles to advance your life,
Yeah.
it's really easy and really this can quickly happen where you become so disenfranchised with politics because, as you said, like people are starting to think, well, they're all the same. Like they're not offering any real change. Like I even look at Labour under Starmer right now, and it doesn't, for me, signify a big enough change. Almost like it's similar to Biden in the US. Like obviously, it's great that he's come in over Trump. God, like I think I think everyone, regardless of, well, maybe bar like Republicans, but like you can kind of go like this was a good thing. He's not going to offer widespread change for the working class. That's not going to happen. And I feel like similar with Starmer under Labour, I feel like it will bring us closer to maybe something a bit better in the UK, but it still won't bring us where it will sort of bring us back, I think, to the Blair years. I think that's where it's sort of going.
I think with Biden, especially in America, I think it's just gonna hopefully allow the country to just breathe and go, right, okay, the madness has stopped. Where do we go from here? And hopefully, hopefully it sways to the left a bit slightly. You've got, Bernie did really well, really, didn't he? I don't really pay much attention to American politics, but I know Bernie Sanders did quite well. Not amazing, but and it's same over here. There was a time where, when we worked together, where there was a genuine like, oh my God, Jeremy Corbyn could do it, and you could see it in the young people. I remember DJing at gigs and putting on what's the song? Is it the oh Jeremy Corbyn, like the actual song, and that's all you heard was the oh Jeremy Corbyn, and it just seemed like there was such a powerful push towards that. So hopefully, but I don't think at the minute. I don't think what we're being offered is the best. Starmer. I don't know what I think really, to be honest with you. I think I don't know if I'd vote Labour again at present. It's just it looked like we were going that way of kind of becoming the socialist party that Labour are supposed to be, that Labour, was built upon. And now, it's just getting a bit too centrist again, where, I think you're right. I think he's kind of more sort of Tony Blair than, than Jeremy Corbyn or whatever it was really. Which is a shame, man. I think he was, and he's alienated the left as well a lot, which I don't think really helped him out because, I think it was pretty much the left that kind of was keeping Labour kind of going for the past sort of 6-7 years or whatever it was since Jeremy Corbyn took over. But I just hope people see now that I think we need. I think it was, of all people, I think it was Danny Dyer, was it, who was like let's just get rid of this Etonian class of idiots that have no real skills in life, even social skills, who are somehow put in charge of the country. Do you know what I mean? They're brought up, weighted on hand and foot. They've got no real life experience at all, and then they're set to govern a country of, you know, people. You know, there's probably what 5% of this country that probably understand that Boris Johnson would understand how their lives work, and then the rest of them, he's probably got no clue, because why would he ever need to? I guess, you know.
Well, that brings me on quite nicely, actually, because I know we were talking a little bit before this about sort of like working class representation in politics. Since, you know, I think one stat I saw was that Labour, I think when they first started getting MPs in, it was about 60 to 70% of their MPs were working class.
Yeah.
Now it's more like 8%. You know, massive drop. Like probably the biggest example of like a high profile Labour MP you'd say had a working class background is in Ashton, Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
Why do you think the working class representation in politics has sort of diminished over the years? Like, as you said, we've seen like this new, not even new, this old Etonian class that are sort of ruling Westminster, really.
I think it's what's the word I'm looking for? I think like I was saying before, I think they've been trodden on so much in like what you were saying, that most people don't, like you say, don't care. Like I speak to the majority of my friends, the majority of my family, and like saying, not many of them vote. I don't think, not many of them care when it gets to election sort of year, or the months running up. You know how vocal I am on Facebook and that. And I'm known as, oh, Andy's dead political, and it's like, everybody should be. You know, for me, I remember one thing that always sticks in my mind. When I was in high school, we had a Holocaust survivor come in. This old fella, and he told us a horrendous story about his life growing up in. I think he was. I don't know where he's from, but obviously, you know. And I remember the one thing that's obviously, a lot of it stuck with me, what he said, because it was horrible. But the one thing that really stuck with me was people chose to vote Hitler in. And he was like, he looked at the whole room of like 15-year-olds, and he was like, look, in 3 years' time, I'm just checking the maths here. In 3 years' time, you guys are going to be handed this powerful tool. You're going to be able to decide who you want to lead. And that always stuck with me, because I was like, wow, yeah, like, you know, people voted him in. Like, people, you know, that's the power of voting. You know, everybody makes a difference. Every single vote counts. We've seen that, you know, in the past, you know, few elections where absentee votes, or whatever they're called, non-votes, just could have swung it either way. But yeah, I think there's no working class representation in politics anymore, because X factors on, you know, or whatever. You know, I'd rather be doing this, or, you know, there's just so many distractions and things like that pull you away from it. And then, like you say, you know, you don't. I think Withenshaw has a Conservative Party. I don't know why, but they do. Sort of whatever it's called, and you literally see them in the run up to election month, and that's it. Boris came, took a few pictures at a boxing club nearby, and then that was it. You don't ever see him. You don't ever hear about him. You know, our local MP, Mike Kane, he is a working class lad. You know, he's a good bloke, Mike. You know, there is a small bit of working class representation, but yeah, there's not enough, and I do think it is because of, again, going back to what I was saying, just the lies that are fed, this whole it doesn't matter who's in charge anyway, or I can't make a difference. What does my vote matter? Is so wrong. That, yeah, I just can't see a way round it. But also at the same time, you know, I think people are a lot more political now than they ever were, which you can see that coming through through social media and things like that. So hopefully we'll get some change. If anything, this pandemic's got to have shown people the incompetence of the Conservative government. You know,
You'd hope so.
yeah, you know, I mean, working class areas, you know, it's statistically more likely to be hit hard by this stuff, and has been. So hopefully, you know, that red wall is getting built back up again, brick by brick, or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. If Scotland get their independence, can the North? That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Well, it's funny you talk about that. There is like a growing movement for that. Like, I don't know if you've seen it. There's like a Northern.
I follow it on Twitter. Yeah. What is it? To be called what was
Northumbria?
It called? Northumbria. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Like, well,
Manchester'd make a great capital.
Yeah, well, I think they might have a few things to say about that. I think they're from up like Durham way, so like might not Manchester might not make the cut. But
wouldn't that be brilliant if Barnard Castle was the new home of the PM or whatever we'd have up in Durham?
It's so bizarre, but like that's definitely the way it's going. Like, I think that brings me on quite nicely actually to like obviously during the pandemic we've seen like how much you know, through job losses, through like health as well, and like how it's affected disproportionately like northern communities. We saw like Andy Burnham like became like a real figure of not rebellion as such, because you know he was doing, you know, it wasn't like it was radical what he was doing. I think you know, he was doing the right thing by, you know, standing up for his constituents. Obviously we've seen that happen, and Manchester's sort of, you know, not had the support we needed. They were then haggling over that £5 million, which was just absolutely ridiculous, but
yeah,
it happened. But do you think that the North are disproportionately affected, you know, poorly by decision making down in Westminster?
Yeah, 100%. And again, you know, that goes back to the fact that, you know, what is the North to people like Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, etc.? Like, they don't care about it. Like, you know, they've never had to give a crap about it, you know, unless it's election. As you know, you've moved there. It's such a vibrant city, and Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, like, they're such vibrant, you know, amazing cities that contribute a hell of a lot to the country as a whole, the nation as a whole. But yeah, again, it goes back to that thing. Why would, you know, these stupidly rich, stupidly, you know, silver spooned toffs basically care about, you know, cities such as Manchester or the North in general? And yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really radical what Andy Burnham did. It was just what a politician should be doing, and sticking up for his constituents. And you know, and it was great that he did it. And like you say, it was ridiculous that he even had to. And then the next week, didn't London get pretty much what he was asking for anyway? Like, it you know, every decision, like the decision over schools at the minute, you know, all the schools in London have to be shut. We have to keep London safe. Forget the rest of the country. Forget, you know, the kids in Manchester where it's apparently we've had the highest rates for months, and in Liverpool and places like that. I do think it's unfair. And yeah, you know, I think the pandemic's just shown that. I don't think it's a new thing. You know, there's all this whole levelling up of the North and stuff like that, with you know, sticking a new train line here that's going to get you into London that bit quicker and stuff like that. Is just idealistic crap, really. I think, you know, what needs to be done is, you know, more sort of funding into the areas, you know, like we were saying earlier, you know, looking after the people that are here and welcoming in new people, like we were saying, by, you know, affordable housing and sort of, you know, council houses and stuff like that. But yeah, well done to Andy Burnham. You know what I mean? Like I say, it's, you know, it's something that it's his job basically. It's crazy that in this day and age, a politician just doing his job properly is headline news. Should be done all the time. Do you know what I mean? It should be done by those up in Westminster, you know.
Well, someone whose job it wasn't to do something, obviously, I'm going to touch on now, is Marcus Rashford. Obviously, he made headlines over the summer for his free school meals campaign, managed to make the government U-turn, and then he got given an MBE, which I think they thought would shut him up, and then they wouldn't do over Christmas, and then had to U-turn again. You had all these politicians, you know, in constituencies up in Manchester as well, like Tory MPs up in Manchester who were, you know, fully behind the line from, you know, Johnson and co about how free school meals and doing it wasn't feasible, despite, you know, how much money they found for their mates for billions in contracts for, you know, PPE and test and trace, which has been an absolute failure. Let's not beat around the bush with that. So you do have to wonder, like, you know, why does it take someone like Marcus Rashford to lead a campaign like that? Why weren't, you know, the Labour Party leading that campaign really? Like, it felt like he sort of started it and they sort of cottoned onto it once they realised it was something that could, you know, go big. But why does it take people like Marcus Rashford to lead a campaign like that? I know obviously he experienced, you know, food poverty as a kid as well, and he grew up in Wythenshawe as well, as you'll attest to as well. But it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, you know, Rashford was, you know, any kind of government's worst enemy, because he's got no political ties. You know, he's got no, like you say, you know, why didn't Labour jump on it? Because, you know, Labour voted, that particular politician might have voted this way back in the past, or might want to, you know, one day become the leader, so they can't quite vote on this, and, you know, their constituents might not get behind that, so they have to look after that. Where, you know, Rashford plays for one of the greatest football teams in the world. He's got an amazing job, amazing career. You know, he doesn't have to worry about them things, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's ballsy. You know, like you say, they thought the MBE would shut him up, and it didn't, and I think that was great as well, because that, you know, will happen a lot. And because, again, you know, going back to that kind of the representation thing, he's lived it, and they were scared because this guy who has got so much clout on social media, on, you know, just his presence, just who he is, you know what I mean? Scared them massively, because it was a little glimpse of, I think, the working class saying, "Hang about, mate. You're feeding our kids," and it's such a mental issue of that. You know, why did it even have to be a thing? And like, feed kids, like, it's just, it doesn't make sense that anyone would vote against it. And 320 something, was it, MPs did. And again, I mean, it saddens me. I remember at the time, because I was very vocal about what Marcus was doing. You know, I'm not massively into football, but I knew his sister quite well growing up. I went to college with his sister, and just in being from the area in general made me proud. You know, being the kind of socialist that I am, seeing like this big, high-powered footballer getting his voice heard was amazing. So I remember posting things on social media, and people were like, replying to it with things like, the parents should feed the kids, parents shouldn't have kids if they can't feed them. And it's like, that's never an argument, ever. But even less so when there's a pandemic on. It's like, okay, you've not got a point there, but I sort of see where you're coming from, that the parents should feed the kids, or, you know, the parents shouldn't have kids. Where that's not even a valid point, but the parents should feed the kids. But did you know that there's this coronavirus thing going on that means that parent can't actually go to work because they work in a pub or a hospitality sector where it's closed, and they're only getting 80% of the really crap wage that they get anyway. I think people are just too cozy, kind of sat there doing the kind of office jobs or whatever they're doing, getting the 80% for not, you know, or getting their 8% furlough or whatever on a half decent wage, where they can't see that. You know, I've worked in pubs when I was younger, and things like that, where you come out with about £100 a week some weeks, so you're getting like 400 quid a month. 80% of that, if you've got a family, it's not gonna you're not gonna be able to feed your kids and keep the lights on and keep them warm. You know, and we can see that with food banks popping up left, right, and centre, and things like that. And yeah, you know, massive respect to Marcus Rashford for doing that. because he didn't have to, because he could just sit there with his millions or whatever he's got, and he's made it. He's a a working class lad who's done right, and he's made it. And the fact that he cares so much about his community and the kind of community that he came from is amazing. And it'd be great to see more of that represented in politics. I'd love it if Marcus Rashford ran for MP of Wythenshawe and say, at least, because I reckon he'd get, and again, I think that's what was amazing about it, having coming from this area. I've got a lot of like laddie mates, and you see them on social media, and they don't care about things like racism until it's in football. They don't care about things like inequality until it pops up in football. It's amazing that it was a footballer that did it. I think if it was an actor that did it, or a soap actor or anything like that, like kind of high profile figure, I don't think it would have had the same clout, because I saw a lot of them kind of laddie lads going, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, Marcus has got a point here," and it's like, yeah, like there was other people telling you this, last year, the year before. You should have listened then. Really, it's crazy that it took a footballing hero to do it, but I'm glad he did, because again, I was lucky enough when I was younger to never need free school meals, but a lot of my friends did. It would have been, like you say, a lot of theirs kind of only hot meal of a day, and and when we're in a time of a global pandemic where a lot of people are at work and stuff like that, I think that should have been that should have been point number one: feed the kids. Like, it goes without saying. Do you know what I mean? It's such a basic human principle. It's just a basic human instinct, isn't it, to look after children, that everyone should have just got behind it, and it shouldn't have even, in like you say, in the sixth richest economy in the world in the year 2020, have even been a political issue.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Like, it's crazy that there was a discussion around it and like debates around it, and they did this in Parliament, and it's like there isn't any. I remember one MP, I think, saying about like they were scared of giving kids free school meals because they might use the money for, like, the parents might use it for like brothels and like buying drugs and stuff, and it was just this real sweeping generalization and this hideous stereotype of parents from deprived communities, that's how they'll use their money, which is just it was an absolute disgrace. But I don't think they apologized for it. I think it was very much like they doubled down on it and said, well, people I know of constituents that have done that. And it's like, really? Like, can you really? I don't think it's even possible to do that.
No.
And how it's distributed. But I just found it baffling.
That's another, Tory myth, Tory lie, and another one of them great deceptions that they've managed to do. They've managed to turn the working class on themselves in that way. Because, yeah, like I said to you, there was a load of people kind of replying to my tweets or my posts online saying things like that. Oh, they'll spend it all on cigs anyway. Oh, I bet they've all got iPhones though, the parents. It's like, so what? Just because the poor, they're not allowed kind of like basic, not human rights, but they're not allowed just like the basic fundamentals.
Well, like,
what if they've got an iPhone? Or so what if they treat themselves to a pack of cigarettes? Like, that doesn't mean that kid's any less deserving of that food, and it's not that kid's fault at the end of. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's no child should ever go hungry in anywhere in the world. Never mind, like you say, Great Britain in 2020, 2021.
Well, like, you need a phone as well for like, even like you need a phone. Like, you just need a phone. You need internet, to apply for jobs and whatever else. Like, it's become a massive necessity in the 21st century to own a phone, whether that's an iPhone or not. Like, that's something that everyone, deserves and needs. And the fact that people go, well, they can't have that because it's, they see it as some sort of luxury, when it's very much not now. Like, it's a commonplace thing to have a phone. I just find that really, like, obviously, as you say, it's like turning the working class against themselves and sort of saying that people aren't deserving of X because they did Y. And it's a very toxic culture that they've created.
It is. I remember there was I can't remember who said it, but it was an American comedian, and he was talking about Britain, and he was amazed. It was like over in America, like we just have regular old racism. He's like, we just have racism. He was a God, I can't remember what it was on, but he was talking about. It was like, but over in Britain, like somehow you've managed to be racist to each other through the class system, and that's all it is. That is literally all it is. It's just a way that the powers that be can have some kind of control over, the blame game. Do you know what I mean? It is that blame game, and it can turn it on at the flick of a switch. And it's so dangerous that they can turn it on subjects like that. Like you say, like the tampon tax. Do you know what I mean? Like a basic human need, something that 50% of the population just can't help the fact that that happens to them once a month. And it's debatable, and you like say, feeding kids, like it's crazy that another human can look over and go, well, their kids shouldn't be able to be fed because they have an iPhone, or because they have a cigarette, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it just baffles me. I just don't think, for me, I could ever see the other side of that coin, of that argument, especially last year, especially during the pandemic. Like, of all times, that shouldn't have even been an argument. And then didn't Rees-Mogg recently call, I don't know the name of the charity, but wasn't there a
UNICEF. It was UNICEF.
Didn't he recently call them, wrong for interfering with politics? And it's like, it shouldn't be politics. It should, you know what I mean? Like, it's children. Like, that's the one thing that should just be, a basic human right, the right to eat, to have shelter. And it's being sort of jumped on from a high height and trampled on more and more. And it's scary where that might lead. And the working class, and we'll just kind of let it happen, because if it doesn't affect them personally, it doesn't affect you personally, why should you care about it? I think is the wrong motto that's kind of threw about a bit.
It's like this individualism, isn't it? Like, if I'm all right, I don't really care about the other person. That's definitely, again, that's been a culture that's been bred, I think, by this current government, of like making sure like you're fine and your people around you are fine. But, if there's any policies that are about people that doesn't affect me, then I don't care. Like, you can kind of,
and the proud of it.
A lot of people do think like that.
Yeah, and the proud of it. You see it in Westminster now with these backbencher Tories who don't want lockdowns, who don't want furlough and stuff like that, because, like you say, the way that they put it is, we part of conservatism is that people should be able to look after themselves and their own destiny. And again, there is an element of that that's true. Yeah, you should be able to look after yourself and whatever. But it's different right now. Like, it's not 2018, and again, it doesn't really have an argument, but there is kind of a little bit of an argument of that. It's a year where no one has got any control over anything at the minute, because there's a virus ripping through the country. Like, people can't go out and get a job for fear of catching a deadly virus. People can't, I'm fearful of sending my kids to school. You're constantly fearful of something. My wife works in a hospital. You're constantly like, what's going to happen? You can't do anything. You can't literally live right now. So this whole argument of people being able to look after themselves is at the moment just obsolete. I think we do need that kind of, to one thing, I think that's going to get us out of this, and hopefully people are seeing, I believe, is a little bit more socialism. We have to band together on this. Look at the first lockdown, when everybody kind of did band together and stayed in. The vast majority of people were like, yeah, okay, we have to look after each other here. It worked. Numbers came down, etc., etc. Where I think now, because of the absolute catastrophe that the Tories have done, these kind of tier 4s, November lockdowns just aren't working because people are starting to think that way of, well, I've not got it, I'm all right, if I get it, I'll be fine. I won't care. I'm young, I'm fit, I'm healthy. And it's like, no, like you just need to think a bit more collectively, and that's why, you know, places like China and stuff are on top of it because they are a lot more collectively thinking, just in nature.
How do we, I guess like my question for you really is like, how do we turn this tide on this sort of individualism, and getting people engaged in politics again from people from working class communities? Obviously you said yourself, like, I don't know how you got into politics yourself, but obviously you're saying that a lot of people that aren't really engaged in it, but like obviously to fight for working class futures, we need the working class engaged in politics for first and foremost. And like, how do we drive that, and how do we get more collective as a community?
I think first and foremost, people need to, without sounding like a one of these mad conspiracy theorists, like wake up, and realize that the media that they're consuming, like the Daily Mail, the Sun, and things like that, are just completely one-sided and just lying to them basically, and shifting that blame as we said before, and just see for themselves that it's the multi-billionaires and things like that should be helping. I think that's one thing that needs to change. I think billionaires should be outlawed. I don't think anyone should be allowed to amass that amount of money ever. And I don't know, mate. I don't know how we get out of it. I think slowly we will. I think, unfortunately, like all times in human history, I think it has to go one way before it can go the other. And I think hopefully, one thing about this whole pandemic situation is, that people are having to start thinking a little bit more collectively, and seeing that it works. We've seen this year, and we've gone out and clapped on our doorsteps for the NHS. We've seen how good that NHS is and how amazing it can work. And that's that's a socialist idea in itself. We can have that with education. We can have that with care homes. We need we need some sort of national care system and national education system. We need even during the sort of main lockdown, they pretty much nationalised the railways again. And it's like, oh, okay, so this stuff works, does it? You've been telling us for years that stuff doesn't work, but now we can do it because there's, let's try doing that when the world's kind of all right, and see how that can benefit people from all areas. A lot, even stuff so small as that, like being an actor, trains up and down to London and things like that, so expensive because Richard, what's his face owns it. His name's gone out of my head now. Virgin own it, or whoever owns it. Richard Branson. There we go. It could be owned by us. It could be us who own it. And the prices are controlled based on, who's using it and how frequent it's used and stuff like that, rather than it, just being overcharged to stand up for 2 hours on a train to London. Same with the care system. We've seen that rip shreds. We've seen the coronavirus rip shreds through the care homes, through private care homes where they're supposed to be, tip top and all that. And again, we can do that. And yeah, it'll cost us a little bit more in tax, but I just think it's the only reasonably sensible way forward. I can't see capitalism. I think we're hoping we are kind of seeing the end of capitalism, I think, which would be great. Although I do like Nike trainers. I do like little bits of it. Nike, Pepsi, things like that. Big, a McDonald's every now and again.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think we definitely, I think socialism, or like some sort of form of socialism, is the way forward. Without that, I don't think we're ever going to make as much progress as we want to in this country. I think there's also this sort of neoliberal capitalist agenda, which has been brought about, first through, Tony Blair, you could even argue for the Labour years, and now it's been continued through Cameron, and now we're sort of going through this like, ultra capitalist phase of, this sort of like hard right government. And I think until we start redistributing wealth in a much more balanced way, we're going to keep seeing heightened inequality, poverty, and more have-nots than the haves, really.
Yeah, I think one of the things is, and this is something I always say to people, because I think nowadays, like, becoming a millionaire isn't that out of reach. It's not really. You make the right decision, and you open the right company at the right time, and you could become a millionaire overnight. You go on a game show, you could be a millionaire overnight. It's the people that realize that, I think, that defend billionaires, but then don't realize the difference between a million and a billion. They just see it as like a little bit more than a million. And it's like, it's like if you had a pound, if you had to spend a pound every second of every day, it'd take you 11 days to spend £1 million. It'd take you 33 years to spend £1 billion. Like, that's the difference. Like, you can have a great, almost a great fortnight, or you can have, like, I'm not even 33 yet. Like, I could have been doing that since the day I was born and still have millions in my bank now. I think that's one issue of it. I think people don't understand how disproportionately the wealth is distributed, and how much money is sort of hidden away in dodgy dealings or whatnot, and how much money billionaires actually have, and how much influence that they actually have when they are friends of the prime minister or friends of the cabinet, etc. It is unfair, and I just can't see how the world carries on like this. I think there has to be an element of some form of socialism or something like that. Even look at sort of Jeremy Corbyn, some of Jeremy Corbyn's kind of election pledges. What he pledging to kind of roll out internet to every home, or how amazing would that be? Would that have been this year, for instance, where there are kids who are sat at home and their families can't afford the internet and they're having to learn somehow from home, or meeting you on Zoom. Like, it's become such a, like you were saying before, such a fundamental human need now to be online, to look for jobs, to just exist. How much of your day is now existing in that kind of space. But I think we need to kind of keep that in mind when the next election rolls round, whenever that'll be, and think about going out on the doorstep and clapping for a socialist kind of organization like the NHS and things like that, and how well them things can work, and how well stuff like that did work when we needed it in the time that we really needed it, and hopefully vote for some more of that and less of the other bit.
No, that's great, mate. I think we've pretty much touched on everything. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries, mate.
I hope you have a good sort of start to 2021.
No worries. See you later, mate.